You have found the Lions College Football Podcast for Thanksgiving weekend, week 13, and we know in college football, this week is massive. Lots of huge rivalries. Joining me, my name is Steven Andress, is the Lions College Football writer Brett Gibbons to break down some of these big slates. And Brett, before we get into these slate of games, including games on Thanksgiving night, games on Friday as well, a full slate of Saturday action, you just want to make a note about one interesting betting angle in general heading into this weekend.
Yes, I want to list out some important situational things here. Just a general note for when you're looking at the board. Look for teams that have 5 wins. You have to have 6 wins to become bowl eligible. And then look at their opponents and see who they're playing who may not have that much to play for. For example, Missouri, they're 5-6. They're 3-point home dogs against Arkansas. That's spicy. That's something I am looking to maybe take a money line bet on Mizzou for, specifically because of the situation. They play, I believe, at like noon on Friday, so it's kind of a weird time that they always play anyway. Florida Atlantic, 5-6. They're 7-point home dogs against Western Kentucky. Another potential money line bet. We'll get into Auburn, Alabama, but Auburn, 5-6. 22-point underdog on the road at Alabama. UTEP 5-6. They're 17-point road dogs against UTSA, who's already clinched a spot in the Conference USA championship game. So they don't have a lot to play for. We're talking Michigan State 5-6. They're 18.5-point road dogs against Penn State. Penn State, no spot in the Big Ten championship to play for. Georgia Southern, 5-point home dogs against App State. Vanderbilt, 14-point home dogs against Tennessee. And Miami, 6.5-point home dogs against Pitt. So there's a lot of home dogs you can take that have one win away from bowl eligibility. They're going to be playing really hard. And if they find teams that really don't have, the win might not mean so much, a spot in the championship game or the playoff or something like that, you might be able to take a money line flyer on some of these. And I bet you at least one of these teams on the list that I just rattled off will win outright this weekend.
All right, so bet these teams maybe to cover the spread, maybe a little sprinkle on the money line on these ones. I like it. It's a fun angle. Obviously, the motivation's there to get to a bowl game for sure. So I love that angle. Absolutely. Let's get into the full slate of games here on Thanksgiving week for college football, and we will start on Thanksgiving night, the Egg Bowl between Mississippi State and Ole Miss. This one got a little spicy with some Lane Kiffin rumors reported by a local TV anchor. Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern time kickoff on ESPN. Total of 59 in this one. What do you like about the Egg Bowl?
Well, it just became a whole lot more interesting. I know that Lane Kiffin has come out, doubled down with his players that he's committed to Ole Miss. He tweeted a whole bunch of nonsense. I think he's overdoing it. I think he's gone. I think he takes that Auburn job. So I don't buy that this wasn't just an attempt to deflect distraction from his team. I think it was maybe supposed to come out on Friday, not before the Egg Bowl. That's kind of a big deal. I think it is going to affect this Ole Miss team. I'm done betting them. I'm done betting them. I've been so wrong on Ole Miss all year. So I'm just going to lay out some of the facts and let the folks draw the conclusions instead of, suggesting a bet myself. When Ole Miss loses big, LSU, Arkansas, both times that I picked them to win, they've given up a host of rush yards. That's 255 yards and 355 yards to Arkansas this past week when they lose. And then they lost to Alabama, who has just simply outclassed them. But when they play these lower level opponents, basically, if you run the ball on Ole Miss, that's how you beat them. Well, Mississippi State is last in the entire country in run rate, 29%. That's not really a surprise under Mike Leach's air raid system, but it is an angle to note. Again, I'm not betting this. I think Ole Miss would be able to run the ball. I don't think Mississippi State will or even attempt to. Aggregate power ratings like Ole Miss by 3.1 points. Do that what you will. I'm not recommending a bet because I'm 0-for with Ole Miss.
On Friday afternoon on ABC, Tulane plays Cincinnati. Cincinnati, a 2-point home favorite, total of 46.5 in this one. Big implications here, Brett, in the AAC.
Yes, this is for a spot in the American Championship game. Could also be a rematch. We could see these two teams play next weekend, which would be really exciting. Looking at this at the beginning of the year, you would have never thought Tulane at Cincinnati would be a must-watch game on Friday, but it now is. So quarterback for Cincinnati, Ben Bryant, he got hurt last Saturday. I'm not sure that he's going to play. Luke Fickell said he won't practice this week. And then I quote, "If we get to a game time situation and he's able to do it, then we can go in that direction." whatever that means. To me, that kind of sounds like he's not going to start, but maybe will be dressed to be able to put in if need be. Instead, we're looking at 4-star recruit Evan Prater, who would get the start here. Talented, hasn't really shown a whole lot in spots this year. Cincinnati, they still can't run the ball. They're one of the worst teams in the American at trying to rush the ball. But if you kind of like dumb this down and really try to underthink it, Tulane is decent defensively. They're not world beaters, and Cincinnati's very good defensively. So I kind of lean taking the home team under a field goal, even if Ben Bryant isn't playing. But I kind of like the angle of over 46.5 points here. Again, with or without Ben Bryant, these teams tend to score a bit more than that. And I don't think either defense is so shut down that they're going to hold the other to just peanuts. So 46.5, that's a nice total, especially when you're talking about the middle to lower level totals in college football. Those points at home become a lot more valuable. So I can say definitively I'm not betting Tulane. I'm considering betting Cincinnati -2 and also considering the over here.
So full disclosure for everybody, we are recording this on Wednesday morning ahead of the holiday weekend before we go and spend time with our families. So just know that, make sure you are shopping for the best lines here. If you're interested on a side in this game, you can get a 1, a 1.5, or a 2. So make sure you're going to thelines.com under the odds tab. You can find the weekly college football lines under NCAA football to make sure when you see this that you are getting the best of the number at that point in the week. And if you don't have an account with that sports book, you'll get a bonus offer as well just by clicking on the odds in our odds table. So keep that in mind. And also for the rest of the weekend, hit the Discord button, top right-hand corner, go to the Rolls server, click the emojis, and you'll get push notifications when Brett makes a bet here on a big college football weekend. Anything to add there, Brett, before we move on?
Well, that line movement is recent and concerning because it's going toward Tulane. At this point, if you're talking about just 1 point, you're really just talking about a pick 'em. And again, if I'm doing a pick 'em, I'm picking the good defense, the better defense at home.
Okay, Friday night on ABC, some more college football action. This one, rivalry game, non-conference, Florida at Florida State, the Seminoles. Am I reading this right? The ACC team is a 9.5 point home favorite against an SEC team. We don't see that very often, even when Clemson's playing. Total of 58 in this one. What do you like about it?
Florida State is quietly a very good football team. Their losses this season, NC
This
State
good?
when they had Leary, this good. Their losses this season, NC State when they had Devin Leary and Clemson. That's the end of the list. I know it was a crazy game. I know it was way back in week 1, but they have a win over LSU on their resume. Again, first game under Brian Kelly. I get the whole thing. This rivalry name, the Sunshine Showdown. They don't play for a trophy, but I do want to throw some of these cool names in here. I mean, Florida just kind of looked like a team that was either looking ahead or just mailed it in last week. They secured bowl eligibility, but like they're looking at like the Camellia Bowl, just low level, they're not playing really for a whole lot here.
Yeah.
They also took bowl eligibility away from Florida State last year in the Swamp. And if you don't think that matters in this line, I don't know what to tell you. It does. Florida State is going to come out ready to play. They're not looking past Florida. Florida State is the better team. And yes, by 8, 9, 10 points. Am I laying 9.5? I don't know. In a rivalry spot here, I could very well see this being a touchdown game, but I could also see Florida State winning 15, 20 points. And that's because Florida's not very good against the pass. And Florida State can move the ball through the air with Jordan Travis. I guess if you're looking for an angle to bet Florida here, and that's that, well, they have Anthony Richardson. He's a gamer. Florida State gave up Jane Daniels, 114 yards to Jane Daniels way back in week 1. Yeah, but since then, mobile quarterbacks just have been a non-issue for Florida State. Malik Cunningham was shut down. Garrett Schrader for Syracuse was shut down. And Florida State in general is a top 30 team against the pass here. So I don't really know what to think because these rivalry games are tough. Laying 9.5 points with Florida State is a tough ask when it's going to be a gritty thing. But if I'm looking at the two teams, which one is more likely to lay an egg? It's definitely Florida, especially on the road here.
I know Florida struggled, but that's a very interesting line to me. I'm not sure I'm going to bet it because I agree with you. Florida State's pretty darn good and they're better than their record shows, I think. But I just can't remember the last time I've seen that big of a spread with an SEC team being a dog against an ACC team. You don't see that very often.
No.
All right, let's move on to the main event of the day. Michigan at Ohio State, noon kickoff on Fox on Saturday. Ohio State, 7.5-point home favorite, total of 56 in this one. And if I'm not mistaken, Brett, this spread is a lot smaller than it was on, the preseason lines when we came into the year here.
Yeah, so I have a lot to say about this game, obviously. You can see my
As
background.
You should.
My hoodie. I did get notes last week that I was wearing a Fort Worth hat and was so impassioned about TCU that I was actually called a homer a few times. Sorry about that. Yeah. I didn't pay attention to that one, but that's okay.
The kid from Ohio is a TCU homer.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, but if you're looking at each of the last two games, which is what a lot of people are going to do, and I think a lot of reason why this line is what it is, Ohio State struggled severely with Maryland. That's kind of what happens from time to time when you are the hunt at every game. When you are the top dog, you're going to get every single team's best effort every single week. Maryland has given Ohio State fits in the past. This isn't I came out here and said that 27.5 was not enough, and that was not the case whatsoever. I was very wrong about that game, but that happens from time to time here. That said, Ohio State, they're beat up at running back. CJ Stroud, not a great quarterback when he has to go off schedule. Fortunately for him, his receivers are so good and the scheme is usually pretty good that he's not normally off schedule. And then we also saw that this defense that's been playing well all year can play poorly. Now, was this a look-ahead spot on the road? Yeah, I kind of think it was. I think if you play this game 10 times over, I don't think you're going to see a similar-ish result. Michigan, their offense completely shuts down without Blake Corum. He's a Heisman frontrunner for a reason. He's terrific, second in the nation in rushing touchdowns, and that's without playing the entire second half against Illinois. He dressed, but he kind of tweaked his leg, and they didn't play him. Now, did they hold him out of that second half for this game so he can be 100%? Maybe Harbaugh was confident enough that his team was good enough to beat Illinois, but they started to get down, and they still didn't put Corum out there. So I think he's going to play. If you saw on Twitter, he was out delivering turkeys, something he does every year. He's a great guy. Takes his NIL money and buys 300 families turkeys every year. He was out there walking them around without a brace, looking fine. He said he's going to play. But is he going to play at 100%? I don't know. We'll see that. And his backup, Donovan Edwards, I don't know about him either. He hasn't played in a while. I don't think he's going to play in this game. That said, though, with Ohio State, I just don't like this matchup. I didn't like it last year. I don't like it this year. Michigan is going to run the ball 100 times because they won last year with that, and the Ohio State team isn't really all that different from last year. So I think they're going to run the ball a million times on them. I think they're going to be able to pick chunk yards up time and time again. I don't think this is going to be something where Ohio State can separate with electric plays because Michigan's defense is good enough to cap those. Again, though, we're looking at a different backfield. Corum, maybe not 100%. Donovan Edwards, maybe not playing at all. So who's going to carry that load for Michigan is my question, and that really depends. Now, on the other side of the football, or the sideline rather, Mayan Williams for Ohio State, he's been injured all year. But when he plays, he is terrific. He's a bowling ball. He runs everybody over. And the offense is so different with him playing at 100% than when he's not playing at 100% or not playing at all. Again, when he's on the sideline, this offense struggles. Even with Trevion Henderson, who has injury issues of his own, I do worry about those two things a little bit. Ohio State's defense, 3.1 yards per rush allowed this year. That's pretty good. They shut down Roman Hemby, who's been having a terrific year for Maryland last week. And, good wide receivers are what hurts Ohio State's defense this year. They're not very strong in the secondary. They have a couple of guys, but not a lot of depth. And that's why Maryland was able to move the ball with their trio of terrific receivers. Michigan has any pass catchers? I don't really know because they don't throw the ball a whole lot. So I don't think they're going to hurt them with playmaking wide receivers, which has been the Achilles heel for Ohio State. You saw it with Parker Washington against Penn State a few weeks ago. So I just don't think Michigan has the tools in that department, but I still think they're going to be able to move the ball up front. I also question if Michigan can even pass the ball when they need to. They haven't shown it this year. They didn't against Illinois. They should have lost that game probably. A couple of questionable calls at the end of that game. There's a world in which Michigan's offense shuts completely down. There's also a world that Ohio State blows them out of the water. There's also a world where Michigan does the same thing to Ohio State that they did last year because this is a very similar setup to that game. I think I'm probably going to bet this live, if at all. I normally don't like to bet my own team. This game takes enough emotionally out of me in the first place to bet it, so I typically don't. But if I'm looking at it, probably betting this live. I tried to look at the Michigan first half line because I think that they'll keep it close in the first half. I'm not paying minus 120 for 4.5. That's about what I was seeing out there. I've also seen people in our Discord saying that they're interested in playing under 28.5 in the first half. That is interesting to me as well. So if you're looking at it, live line, first half under, that's about where I fall on this one.
You know what, Brett? Nothing wrong with that, all right? We live in a day and age where we are not forced to have a pregame opinion when it comes to our bets. We have the luxury, if we want to watch to see how the game's playing out early on, to see if a team is moving the ball well, if that was a concern coming into the game. And even if they don't score points on that drive, we at least are encouraged in their ability to move the ball down the field and possibly get a better number than what we saw pregame. So the flip side of that is also true. If a team's getting dominated, you might not get the best of the number in a live situation, but there still might be value based on the new information that you have from the first quarter or the first half of that game. So I think you make great points here. It's the biggest game on the slate, obviously, and there's a bit of confusion on each side here of how this is going to play out, as a lot of Ohio State Michigan games tend to do, especially after Michigan pulled the upset last year. So nothing wrong with waiting for a live number here, and it sounds like that's what your strategy is going to be.
Yeah, the last note on that with the live is I believe we'll know how this game is going to shake out after the first drive for each team. When you see whether Blake Corum's out there, see how he's running, and you see how comfortable CJ Stroud is out there, that is going to dictate what the whole rest of the game is. I don't think it's going to be they come out and struggle on the first drive and then light it up. I think you're going to be able to tell after the first drive for each team.
Okay, moving on. Another game at noon on Saturday. This one on ABC. Another rivalry game in the state of South Carolina. It is the Gamecocks at Clemson. The Tigers a 14.5-point home favorite. Total of 52 in this one, and another fun rivalry game nickname here.
Yeah, the Palmetto Bowl for the Palmetto State. This does have a trophy. It's a big palm tree. It's kind of cool. Okay, what would this line have been before last week? I don't know. They didn't put it out. Something tells me probably not 14.5. I think this is a massive overreaction to what South Carolina was able to do to Tennessee's defense. Clemson's defense is not Tennessee's defense. The Gamecocks are not scoring 63 points on Clemson. That will not happen. And this is also a massive, massive letdown spot for South Carolina after this incredible home win in front of a Rocky Williams-Brice Stadium last year. They then go on to the road in a very hostile Memorial Stadium, Death Valley, as Clemson lays claim to it. And you see it in kind of trends how South Carolina's played this year. They beat Texas A&M back when Texas A&M was ranked, and then they go and lose to Missouri. And then they also got killed by Florida like 1 week before Tennessee. Don't forget that. They only scored 6 in that game. They've also gotten blown out by Arkansas. Clemson is still very much alive in the college football playoff race. It's the team that no one wants to talk about, but they are still absolutely there. And if they win out, they have a very good path to the playoffs. So they have a ton to play for here. I don't anticipate them looking ahead to North Carolina in the ACC championship game. Let's not put on the rose-colored glasses for Spencer Rattler. He has posted lines of 145-0 against Florida's 90th ranked pass defense in terms of EPA, and 171-0 versus Missouri, who has a good defense. But that just kind of shows that against good defenses, Spencer Rattler doesn't play all that well. Clemson's defense, pretty darn good. Not elite like we've seen recently, but still very, very good. If you can get South Carolina on the other side of 14 here, at that 14.5, that's awesome. If you can find Clemson at 13.5, I would absolutely bet that. That's great. I really think that this is a market and power ratings overreaction to what happened last week. I think Clemson comfortably wins this game, but I'm not betting the full line because I don't like it on that side of 14.5. So I'm actually going to look at their first half line because teams in letdown spots can come out and play flat early. I think Clemson is going to make a statement defensively against them. Spencer Rattler is not going to be throwing for, scoring 35 points or whatever they did in the first half against Tennessee here. So I'm actually going to lean Clemson -7.5 in the first half. I don't love that it's the hook on the other side 7, but this number is not going to move to 7 or 6.5. I think this is the best they can do, and I think Clemson is going to go into halftime with a comfortable lead.
3:30 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on ABC is the battle in the state of Oregon. Oregon at Oregon State. Obviously, Pac-12 title game implications here for the Ducks. They are a 3-point road favorite at their rival Beavers. Total of 58 in this one. They call it the Platypus Cup now, Brett. Yes, because a platypus has a beaver tail and a duck bill. And yes. This is the Ducks and the Beavers, which I thought was always fun. But I'm going to be honest with you, I was out there for a couple of years. To the fans of this game and these teams, it will always be called the Civil War.
Yes, but good for them for coming up with a name that is, I think, really cool. They could have come out and like
the trophy's kind of fun too. It's a platypus.
It is, yeah. It's an actual platypus on a little pedestal there. Yeah, so the fans are going to show up for Oregon State, and the stadium's going to be excited. But the problem is an entire grandstand in Reser Stadium is undergoing construction at the moment, so they can only sit about 28,000 in this stadium. Environment is not going to be an issue, is basically what I'm saying here. And that's a lot of what kind of fuels these home dogs and rivalry spots. So when you take that away, that's kind of tough. We know Bo Nix, is hurt. How hurt is he? I don't know. He played last week without expecting to. Looked fine, but you did notice spots where he could have tucked and ran the ball for a first down like he normally would. But because he's hurt, he threw the ball at his receiver's feet or threw it away. That's tough. Let's see if he does that again this week, if he's kind of got his legs back under him or what have you here. Oregon's biggest liability this season has been their passing defense, but Oregon State is playing a backup quarterback who is just not a threat. He's thrown for fewer than 150 yards, the same amount of times they've thrown for over 200 yards. Just not really a weapon for them. So I don't think that they're going to be able to expose Oregon's passing defense or lack thereof in this one. And Oregon still has a ton to play for. They have a spot in the Pac-12 championship game if they win. That is just that cut and dry. So they are going to be playing for that spot there. And Oregon State is playing for an upset, I guess. I'm pretty sure that Chance Nolan, their starting quarterback, like I mentioned, I don't think he's going to play. He hasn't played since October 1st. I'm taking Oregon -3 with or without Bo Nix. They're just a better team at this point. They have a decent enough run defense to where I think that they're going to be able to keep Oregon State from scoring 45, and then Oregon State's offense just hasn't really been that good. And I think they have the playmakers offensively to beat this Oregon State defense. That is good. I just think that Oregon is too much to play for, and that this isn't going to be an intimidating enough atmosphere to really stun them early.
First of all, I just want to say, you are going to get Oregon State's A+ effort. Now, they have a backup quarterback in there, but Oregon State, from the players to the coaches to the fans, have this complex where they are sick and tired of hearing about Oregon and their fans because they are the Nike school and they have the bigger fan base, and the people of Corvallis want to win this game more than any other. If it was between beating Oregon and going to a Pac-12 title game, they would choose beating Oregon. And they have an opportunity to keep Oregon out of the Pac-12 title game here, which they are licking their chops for that opportunity. And I was at that Oregon game last week, Brett, and it was clear that the read option stuff with Bo Nix's ankle was out of the playbook. They were not doing that. So they had to win that game with defense, which is something I thought it was a really solid bounce back effort by their defense after they got manhandled by the Washington offense. Can they do it again? We'll see. But I don't think 20 points like they scored against Utah is going to be enough to win this game against Oregon State. So I kind of lean the dog here, but I kind of hope I could get a 3.5, to be honest with you. I think this is another spot where I'm going to wait on the live line. And if Oregon gets an early score here, or even if they, start driving down the field, this line might move to 3.5 on the live right away. So I think I'm backing home dog here, despite the less than ideal crowd situation with the construction and all that. And, we saw Oregon State play USC really tough earlier this year too. So I think they're going to be able to run the ball, shorten this game, keep Oregon off the field. And, credit to Bo Nix for playing hurt last week, but clearly that was not the best version of their offense last week. Would you agree with that part?
100%. Yeah. I can't say that was the best Oregon offense that we can see. I think the difference though between the Washington game and their other game, and the other games that are going on here or the Utah game specifically, is that Washington is extremely efficient through the air. Utah is not that efficient through the air. They don't really have pass catching weapons, and neither does Oregon State. So I hear what you're saying about the want to and the drive, and absolutely. But the want to and the drive only goes so much. If you don't have the guys to make it happen, I don't know if they can make it happen. And USC, we'll talk about USC in a minute. I will talk about that very game specifically in a minute here because I have my own thoughts about that. But I hear what you're saying. Yes, if you are going to bet Oregon State, do what Steven's doing, bet it live, or wait to see if you can get the hook before kick.
The Iron Bowl. Auburn and Alabama. This one in Tuscaloosa. The Crimson Tide, a 22.5-point home favorite. 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time kick on CBS, as it seemingly always is every year. Total of 49.5 for this game on Saturday. No trophy, obviously, but this means everything to these fan bases.
Yes, it does. And it means even more to the Auburn coaching staff because you have Carnell Cadillac Williams, who is an Auburn star, now heading the team. Brian Harsin doesn't know the Iron Bowl. Cadillac Williams knows the Iron Bowl. This team is going to be explosive and excited. Now, they're not very good, but they do things well that Alabama doesn't, and that is they run the heck out of the ball. Over the past 3 games, they've rushed the ball 67% of plays. That is second most in the country behind the service academies. So if you take the service academies out, it's Minnesota, and then it's Auburn. All they do is run the ball. And if you look at Alabama's kind of per rush yards or EPA, like they look pretty good, but teams have been able to move the ball on them through the ground. The last 2 times out, they've given up almost 200 yards on the ground to LSU and Ole Miss. I'm skipping Austin Peay. I'm not doing FCS stuff. Alabama, they're not making the SEC championship game, and they're probably not making the playoff. Besides pride, besides hate for Auburn, what do they have to play for?
Yeah.
This is one of these situations where I'm like, I know that Alabama's going to be up for this. I know they're going to be excited, but because they're so immensely more talented than Auburn, there is a very real situation in which they come out and play flat. Now, do they play flat in the second half of that game? Probably not. That's why I'm going to bet Auburn first half plus 12.5. You can find it at DraftKings as of time of recording, Wednesday, early afternoon. 12.5 doesn't exist everywhere. There are plenty of 11.5s, and that's more congruent to the full spread when you're looking at 22 points. 12.5 points is incongruent with 22 full game. That tells me that this book just didn't move their line. So that's a good line for me. So if a book is moving their full game and not their halves, I'm absolutely taking that first half. And I really do think that Auburn can play ball control. They can play keep away. Persistent teams can run on Alabama. Auburn is a persistent team. They run the hell out of the ball. They have a head coach that is passionate about this rivalry. They have a head coach who maybe might be coaching for this full-time job in the offseason, depending on a few names. I know Kiffin and Primetime and all those. The point is like this is a team that can make this a very close game, even on the road in Tuscaloosa in the first half. I don't think Alabama gets enough possessions to make the first half a blowout. So I like Auburn plus 12.5 here. I see that as an off-market number because I see plenty of 11.5. So when you're talking about halves, 1 point is a ton. That's my bet in this one. I wouldn't bet a full game.
Yeah, and we've seen that there's a tax when you're trying to bet Alabama in the first half, right? They have a lot of games where they get out to a big early lead, and you have to pay more than the typical halftime price on Alabama. So if you like the flip side of that, you're getting a better number, which is exactly the case in this situation. Okay, final game of the podcast this week. Obviously, another rivalry game. Notre Dame at USC, 7:30 p.m. kickoff on ABC. The Trojans are a 5.5-point home favorite in this one, total of 64.5. And again, Pac-12 implications for USC in this one, just as they were for Oregon in the Civil War.
Yeah, watch out for Notre Dame to beat these guys outright. That's not my bet. That's not my bet. But watch out for Notre Dame to beat these guys outright. They are playing for a trophy, which I didn't know existed, and that is the Jeweled Shalila, I believe it's pronounced. Whatever that is, since 1952.
What the hell is that?
I don't know what it is. I couldn't find a picture, but yeah,
While
Jeweled
you are
Shalila.
breaking down this game, I'm Googling it, and we'll have an explanation.
Okay, so USC's defense is so bad that they forced 4 turnovers. They're incredible forcing turnovers. They forced 4 turnovers last week, and they still gave up 45 points. So every drive ended for UCLA, a turnover or a score. Now, Notre Dame's offense isn't world-beating, but USC just doesn't feel the defense. They're 96 in yards per rush allowed, 126th in rush EPA. Their offense hasn't played defense yet. Caleb Williams is great. Their receivers, hurt as they have been, are great. Now, they don't have Travis Dye in the backfield. Stanford transfer Austin Jones stepped up and rushed pretty well against UCLA. But again, UCLA, defense optional team. The best defense that they played this year, Oregon State, that game that we just brought up. And USC scored 17 points. So I don't know. I'm not questioning if their offense is talented. I'm not questioning if their offense can move the ball. Can they score 48 on Notre Dame? Probably not. And Notre Dame's the best pass rush that USC has faced all year. Caleb Williams is a playmaker, but the problem with that is he holds the ball too long. And Isaiah Foxy is going to get after him because USC doesn't have the offensive line to keep Caleb protected. So I think if you get him flustered, again, I'm not scared of LA Memorial Coliseum. That's not an environment that excites me. And I know that we saw a sold-out Rose Bowl and stuff. It's just, these aren't environments that are intimidating to opposing teams, especially a team like Notre Dame that plays at USC every other year. Notre Dame's an obviously improved team from what they were. They lost to Marshall early. They lost to Ohio State. They lost to Stanford. Yikes. But you know who had trouble? Stanford for some of the game? USC as well. You can find decent value on the Notre Dame money line. At 5.5 points, the suggested money line conversion is about plus 184. You can find them for plus 180-ish in that range. Don't be surprised if Notre Dame wins. I'm not suggesting that people bet it. But again, Notre Dame, best pass rush, best defense by a mile. USC does not play defense whatsoever. Notre Dame was able to run the ball on Clemson. They're going to be able to run the ball on USC.
First of all, I'm a dope. This has no Pac-12 implications. It's a non-conference game. USC has already wrapped up their spot in the Pac-12 title game. So this is just a strict rivalry game for USC. So just wanted to correct that first of all. But more importantly, the jeweled, it's pronounced shillelagh. The jeweled shillelagh is the trophy awarded to the winner of the annual game. A shillelagh is an Irish club made of oak and blackthorn saplings from Ireland. On the end of the club is engraved "From the Emerald Isle." It was introduced in 1952 for this first game of the series. It was introduced in 1952 to commemorate the first game in this series that was played in 1926. It was donated by the Notre Dame Alumni Club of Los Angeles, where USC is, stating that, quote, "The shillelagh will serve to symbolize in part the high tradition, the keen rivalry, and above all, the sincere respect with these two great universities have for each other," end quote. So there you go. The jeweled shillelagh for Notre Dame and USC. Good stuff. I'm going to bet Kentucky this week against Louisville. I think they match up really well. I know the metrics suggest that Louisville should be probably a slight favorite on the road here, at least if you look at FPI. I don't care. I think Kentucky matches up really well, and we saw it last year when they blew the doors off Louisville. I don't care that Louisville was improved against some really, less than stellar ACC competition this year. So I'm going to take Kentucky at under a field goal this week as a bet I like. But you just wrapping up here, Brett, a couple other rivalry games you wanted to note. It's obviously an awesome slate.
Yeah, one note really quick on your Kentucky bet. I like it a lot. Good defense at home. Malik Cunningham didn't play last week. Maybe he won't play this week. We'll see. I like that one. Okay, so some fun rivalry names I just wanted to wrap up with. We have the Apple Cup. People know about that one. Washington State. Clean Old-Fashioned Hate, which is a hilarious name to me because it's between Georgia and Georgia Tech, which some would say is not a rivalry if you're a 35-point favorite going into the final week. Duel in the Desert. We got Arizona State this weekend. This one is a funny story because they lost the trophy for 100 years almost, and then it turned up in a church basement. So they reinstated it.
That's a story.
We have the battle for Paul Bunyan's axe between Minnesota and Wisconsin. We have the Rumble in the Rockies between Utah and Colorado. And then we have the war on I-4 between UCF and USF. No bets in those. Just a lot of fun names. College football. It's just a reminder that college football is the greatest.
Just some great trivia. As always, everything at thelines.com is free, including our college football content. You can find the best odds there every week and great sign-up bonuses. Hey, if you're in the state of Maryland, welcome to the club. Online sports betting is here. You can get the best sign-up bonuses over under the Maryland sports betting tab at thelines.com. Top right-hand corner, hit that Discord button, join our community, hitting almost 4,000 people now talking sports betting every single day. Enjoy the holiday weekend. Enjoy all of the football, whether it's college or NFL. For Brett Gibbons, I'm Steven Andress. Best of luck with your college football bets this week.